Hi, everyone. Melissa and Melissa coming to you again today. We're going to talk about a really big subject again. It seems like we do this every week.
We do
We're
do
not
that.
into little subjects.
No, no.
Oh, so thanks for joining me, Melissa. And we're really going to lean into your expertise both as a healthcare professional in the wellness space and in really working with what's happening in your mind and emotions and heart, but also into your expertise around clean products that really help with what we're going to be talking about today. And so we're going to be talking about cancer. Cancer is a big word. Cancer is a big, scary word. And this is something that I have helped numerous people with in all stages and, going both supporting them as they are choosing what kind of treatment they want to go through, whether they want to go completely natural, whether they want to go natural and conventional, whether they want to go completely conventional and then come back and help their body really recover on the backside of that. That's really each individual person's space for them to lean into. But I want to talk today with you about, yes, the physiological issues around cancer, right? We really need to figure out what's driving that for people so we can help the body then heal. But I want to center in on a little bit around when we're thinking about cancer, when we get the news, right? We get the diagnosis and we're like, oh my goodness. And especially usually the practitioner that has delivered the diagnosis has, options to lay out, and you're supposed to make a decision immediately. And just really, how can we support ourselves and how can we support our, maybe we're a friend or maybe we're a practitioner working with someone who just got the big news, right? Or maybe it's us. Can you help us think through what all that looks like, feels like, and what are some really good ways that we walk into that space so that fear doesn't consume our ability to think clearly and really lean into what our body needs?
Yeah, it's really important, and you read stories when people beat cancer, right? And something that is the common thread is they just had a positive mindset, right? And it sounds simplistic, but what we think about is what we bring about. So if we are given, a diagnosis that seems scary, certainly, cancer, but there's others, right?
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. And, we have to then go, all right, either I'm going to dictate how this is going to go, or I'm going to let it dictate how this goes, right? And so this is where it's really about, like, how do I dial into staying present? That's the first piece,
I
like,
love that.
people may not think like, oh, I need to meditate, I just got a cancer diagnosis, but being in meditation and prayer and just being in the moment, which is really hard for all of us, even if we don't have something like that going on, right? But it's really funny, actually. I did a little quick meditation for myself before we hopped on, just because I had a chaotic morning and I wanted to, like, reset and get myself in a
Mm-hmm.
good space. And life does that to us, but I think it's always about, like, am I being reactive or am I being proactive?
I
Right.
like that.
And so if we get used to, taking deep breaths, when I say meditation, you guys, scientifically, they say you only need 3 minutes. So yes, you can absolutely do more. I find like 10 minutes is like a sweet spot for me, but even 3 minutes, everyone can find 3 minutes to just breathe, and just trying to just be there in that moment, because we spend a lot of time in anticipation in our life. And this does not serve us when we have news that comes to us that's difficult to handle, right? Most people hit the panic button, freak out, but think about what that's doing to your central nervous system, on top of now your body has this disease to fight, right? So if you can do what you can to calm this, you've got a much better chance of not only overcoming it, but going through it in a way that doesn't feel as taxing. I've had lots of friends have this diagnosis and do all sorts of holistic things, and I have absolutely seen people respond not well. I don't want to say not well, but I think the fear comes over them. Why aren't you just going to do what your doctor's telling you to do? And here's the cool thing: this day and age, we really have access to so much information and research that I feel like we have an opportunity, excuse me, to look at other alternatives because we have that access to it, right? So, okay, someone might find that traditional route is what's going to make sense for them, but I do think that we have way more options, and we have a lot. I mean, listen, in Germany, they're oxygenating cells, which is beating cancer, right? So, is that technology we have here? No, not as of yet. It's not readily available, but the fact that they're having such a high success rate shows you that we don't have to go through all these things, which, by the way, one of my best friends is going through cancer. It's an aggressive cancer. She's going through the treatment. She's gone through chemo, I don't know, 3 rounds now. Now she's on an oral chemo that she has to be on for the next 3 years. I know, because I love her so much, I get why she just did what they told her to do. However, do I love what all these things are doing to her? No. Right. And so I think that if you're in a space where someone around you that you love has been given the diagnosis, we have to respect their choice, because with her, I had to respect her choice. Would I have treated it differently? Maybe, right? Most likely, because of just how I operate. But I've also operated in this holistic space for a long time, right? So to me, that's my immediate go-to. So it's also understanding that there are a lot of negative side effects to traditional Western medicine's treatment around this disease. And we also have to consider that, cancer has been around a lot longer than it's been as big of a problem as it's been. And we're going to touch upon why it's such a big problem, because there's no coincidence about this increase. But, people were treating this long before we knew about chemo and radiation. I mean, my grandmother had tumors in her lungs and lived to be 95. No one ever addressed these tumors. They, in fact, were just there. And when she passed, it was oh, well, she's got these tumors. We're not going to treat them at this point. It was a couple of years before she passed. And cancer was the least of the issues, right? And so, I think it's about, what does this person want, or what do I want? How can I keep myself in a better mental state? Maybe that's not an amazing mental state, because understanding it's a big diagnosis, but it's also understanding, just because someone gets diagnosed with cancer does not mean they're going to die. Lots of people overcome it. And there are ways to shrink these cells, eradicate them, and we do see it happening. So for me, that gives us hope. And can we operate from a space of hope versus fear, right? And I know before we got on, I even mentioned, the last few years, we saw what fear did to people. And me, from day one, I was listen, I'm not going there.
Yeah.
I refuse. I'm going to keep taking care of my body the way I know how to take care of it. And that's what I'm going to focus on, is adding health and focusing on just continuing to heal my physical being. And so, I think that is the space people have to come from. And if it's, say you're watching this, you have someone around you who's chosen a non-traditional route, and that's bothersome to you, have the conversation. Communication is the key to every relationship. And if that person can explain to you, not that they have to defend why they're choosing this route, but maybe they can share with you some insight as to why they are choosing that path, then maybe that will help you be more receptive, and then you can trust their choice, because at that point, it is their choice to make, right? And I know, again, watching what my friend's going through, I mean, you know me well enough, but definitely would be more likely to be all right, what can we do? You would be my first phone call, quite frankly. but I understand that we're not conditioned in that way in this world, you know. But I do think it's so important, like, what can you do to be present
Mm-hmm.
and not get ahead of yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise, you know, you can really tweak your mindset into a negative space that's only going to make it much harder to have a positive outcome.
Exactly. Exactly. One of the things that, well, there are two big ways that I think about it, you know, especially when I'm walking into this with a client, is that number one, our bodies never do anything without a purpose or without a reason, without something causing that, because our default setting is well. Really, our bodies want to be well. They work really hard to be well. And when we get to a space that our bodies are experiencing cancer, we need to track back and look at what is driving this, right? And that's where we start working on helping the body recover from this and address it.
Yep.
Right? So just knowing that our bodies don't do anything for just anyhow, there's always reasons. You can I've heard this so many times, you know, we don't know what causes cancer. I could tell you, but it's not ever or rarely ever the same for each person, each body, right? So it takes tracking back from that. Okay, here we are, we're at the big C. Let's track back and see what is causing this. And very often there's many drivers, not just one. And the other thing is to understand that when we are faced with, and I love what you said, Melissa, about being in the moment and really leaning into quietness, is when we do that. Like, it's a scary time. I get that. Very scary. But if we can lean into what do you want, or what do I want? Obviously, we want to be better, right? But how do we want to do that? And for a lot of clients that I'm walking into this space with, that is our biggest conversation, because that dictates what their next path is going to look like. If they say, you know, can we address this, you know, holistically, completely? Yes, we can. But my question is to them, is this what you feel in your deepest heart is best for you? Because this is going to be challenged multiple times. So we need you to ground in this. Do you want to, you know, go the completely, you know, medical route? Is that what feels right with you? Okay. Ground in that, because that's going to be challenged multiple times. And then don't like lock yourself into a way of, you know, if we start going down, you know, one of the routes, and there can be a combination of like holistic and traditional. I mean, we can make it whatever we want it to be, but to not lock ourselves into, okay, this is the only way I can do this. It's a good idea to get a good trail of thought, you know, really knowing what you want. But if we need to, you know, switch around and mix it up, give ourselves room to do that. But to really rest in what you want as a person. What do you want to do? Some people are adamant right out of the gate. You know, I want to do this completely holistically. Help me figure out how to do that. You bet, I'm with you. I want to mix it up. You bet, I'm with you. But it's each person's decision. And I love the skills that you gave around being, you know, clearing your mind and how to just use 3 minutes and breath work. And guys, this is really big, because this decision is literally going to change the path of your life. And if we
And it
make it,
applies to everything, right?
oh,
Like, it's not
yes.
just, right? I mean, I think it's probably my most, I mean, I literally today was, I don't know, I said energetically, I don't know what's going on, but
Mhm,
a lot of crisis calls. Normally
mhm,
my
mhm,
Mondays are like, and today I was like,
mhm,
holy Toledo, which is why I meditated before I got
mm,
on, because even though I had prayed this morning and done my gratitude and all that jazz, I was like, oh, like, that was a lot. But every
Mm-hmm.
single person, I said to them, you need to do this 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And we really have no excuse nowadays, because especially because of YouTube, like we have access to billions of guided meditations for free. Right? Like I have all these CDs I bought forever ago and whatever. But we have so many free resources out there. It just takes people stopping and using them.
Yeah. And not operating from a place of fear, being able to recognize that that's where they're at, and then having the tools or using the tools to step away from that space of fear.
And I love that you pointed out, that you can usually link back, and I think a common thread that we see often is an overexposure to a lot of chemicals, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that seems to be, I mean, listen, my stepdad's a mechanic. He was exposed to so many petrochemicals for decades upon decades upon decades, right? Soaking them into our skin, and this is the thing, you guys, this is where I really come in with, looking at your products and what you're using, because your skin's your largest organ, right? Everything we put on our
There's no
skin
filter.
there's no filter. Yeah, that's scary when you think about that. But within 26 seconds, everything that ends up on our skin is in your bloodstream. It's so fast.
Yeah.
And so if someone's working with those, you see all these class action lawsuits with people that were using, Roundup and DEET and all these things, right? And so, it's like, okay. And sometimes, I'll hear the train of thought like, well, we're walking around on all these chemicals, whatever. It's like, yeah, but you can decrease your toxic load in a lot of ways, right? I know you and I do this work together. I was doing it even before I met you. Like, there are ways to get things out of your cells, you guys. You don't have to operate with this mindset of like, well, I'm just going to get cancer anyway. Like, I reject that, because I'm like, no, I work too hard to keep adding health and to keep my body clean. And the simple act of movement and sweating, right? Like, and we know there's so many herbs that help, but a big thing, and I had shared this with Melissa. So I, in my organization, I have a gal who does cancer research. And so years ago, I'd gone up into Boston to see her lab, and she showed me a cancer cell, and it was all spiky. And but the thing that really stuck with me was she was talking about parabens, and how now parabens are preservatives, you guys. If you look at pretty much any product, unless a company is being really strict about what they're doing, parabens are in a lot of things. They are a cheap preservative and a filler. And so they keep things shelf stable for a really long time, which, a lot of folks don't realize. Like, even if it's in Whole Foods or whatever, that does not mean there aren't fillers, you guys. And by the way, most companies are not transparent. So you also need to find a brand that's going to be 100% transparent about what they're putting in products, because things can sit in a warehouse for 6 to 8 years before they get into a shelf. So they need to be shelf stable for all that time. And yes, is a clean product going to go bad faster? Of course it is. But you actually want that, because it shouldn't be shelf stable forever and ever and ever. But her point was that parabens just get trapped inside of these tumors, and your body doesn't know what to do with them. It's like, and unless you're actively using things to pull the parabens out, which there are binders you can take to do that, it's like, okay, I got to pay attention. And then food, which we've talked about before a bunch, but when we're dumping all these things into our food supplies, and I actually met a gal, she had helped with the linens for my wedding, and her mom had gluten intolerance. Didn't realize it till she was older. And they pulled, she said, a basketball-sized tumor out of her stomach because she'd been eating gluten for so long. And so when they found this, and it was benign, but it was like her body didn't know how to break down the gluten, so it just kept isolating it, right? So what we can do is think about, all right, what am I putting on my skin? What am I eating? And by the way, you guys, it's a lot cheaper to stay healthy than it is to treat illness, right?
Totally. Oh yeah.
When we're in an acute state of especially fighting cancer, no matter what way you're fighting it, it's going to cost a lot more than if you're just making different choices, you know? So when I'm talking to people about clean skincare, clean makeup, you know, even different lotion, you know, like it's funny to me. So like, you know, like
Deodorant.
our body lotion comes in like a this size bottle, right? And people will be like, well, it's not that much. And I'm like, right, but that bottle lasts me a year because I put it on once, my skin absorbs it. And then maybe I, you know, put it on my hands again, but like the rest of me stays moisturized because there's no petroleum or mineral oil in it that create a barrier for that moisture to actually go in, right? So instead of getting this big tub that they sell at like CVS or whatever, it's like, I don't need that because ingredients in there actually do their job. So does it look like a tiny bottle? Maybe, but it still lasts me over a year because it's doing what it's supposed to do, you know? And that's the thing I think really people have to wrap their brain around. Like you do get what you pay for.
Yeah.
And we don't want to bargain shop our health. And I always say our children's enrichment activities because I own a dance studio too. And I'm like, you know, quality over quantity, you guys, right? Like that's an old saying, but it's the truth. And so you may think, well, I just, you know, whatever, I'm going to grab body wash at Dollar Tree, God forbid, right? But okay, let's look at the colored dyes, right? Like I think about the crap. Gosh, I feel like the 90s was and everything got crazy pants, but you know, we're putting like red dye into like kids' bubble bath. Like, great, let's just marinate them in this crap, right? No wonder I had all these allergies and health issues. But, you know, all right, these fragrances that we dump into things and all that stuff, you guys, like your body just doesn't even know what to do with it. And there's clean alternatives. This is the crazy thing is that everything that I use, and I am a product girl, I am, you know, I am a person who likes to like do my makeup, be put together, smell nice, all those things. There's a clean alternative for every single type of product, you know, including hair dye and nail polish. And I mean, nowadays, especially with the internet, we can find all sorts of things, you know, and so it's really important to understand that because we don't have to operate in that way. You know, one of my best friends in my brand, her mom died of a pretty rare type of leukemia. And her doctor actually was very, at least like tuned into like that she got it because she was in the cosmetics industry for so long. She was a hairdresser, you know, cosmetologist. And because she was constantly in contact with all these chemicals. And there is a really great documentary called Toxic Beauty. And I share this, you guys, because this is something that everyone can make changes around, whether you're male, female, whatever. I remember the first time my husband and I watched it, we were like newly dating. And he almost like fell off the chair because he really had never heard of all the like baby powder debacle and the class settlement, you know, around that, the class action suit. But basically the premise of it is this medical student and she is doing really independent research around just products in general. She interviewed a lot of people from the beauty industry, the fashion industry. She herself was testing her levels. Like she went one day using her regular products that were full of all sorts of junk. One day she used clean products that, you know, were paraben free, phthalate free, all that stuff. And then the third day she used no products, which she was like, oh my gosh, like I'm sweating, I smell, like whatever. But what was interesting was her toxicity level the day with no product and then the clean products was actually on par with each other. But then when she was using her regular, you know, the things she was seeing, and the reason why she started to do that is I believe they had found some like precancerous, you know, things. And so, you know, and none of this is to scare anybody, you know, and it's not, you know, it's, listen, you know, the overhaul of like my bathroom cabinet and everything else has not happened overnight. But I know for me, once it started and I realized I had a lot of sensitivities to things and my body just has always, since I was little, been like, I don't like that. So I know immediately if something's going to work or not. Right. And so once I started taking those things out, I saw a big difference. cleaning product, right? Like I wish my
Mhm.
company did cleaning products, but I actually use vinegar and water a lot.
Oh yeah.
Because my little Yorkie actually ended up with some tumors on him. And it was because he was reacting to chemical-based cleaning products.
Mm.
And this was years ago. And of course, I was a brand new like dog mom. I didn't know what I was doing. I was also super young at the time. And once I switched over, they just shrunk,
Mhm.
So again, this is not to overwhelm anyone, but there are amazing brands that are clinically effective, because that's the thing is like, I do work with Arbonne. I'll be transparent. And what people love about our products is they're clinically effective as well as being clean. Some of
Mhm.
my clients are like, I really don't care. I just love that they work so well. But I'm glad that they're better for me, whereas I have other clients who are like myself and are passionate about the cleanliness side, but also still want their products to work really well, and you can have all those things, that is the nice part about now, and there are other brands that have come out and are doing similar things, but, I just read your labels, you guys, and if you can, like, I know we ban 2000 chemicals we won't use, the FDA bans 11. And Arbonne's really transparent about everything we put in our products. So that way, if you have an allergy to something or whatever, you can see it right there, and okay, you can choose to not use that. Or we also have hundreds of choices. I think that the problem, and I've had this happen to me, and I know I shared with you, Melissa, like I've had really bad anaphylactic reactions to things from other brands because they weren't disclosing certain ingredients. And that's totally okay here in the United States, right? So, so, and again, this conversation is not to overwhelm, it's really meant to empower, right? Like, right, what can I
Exactly.
do to lessen my chances,
Can
and
I
if
do?
you
Mhm.
are worried, like talk to Melissa and myself, I can help you switch over things you are using. Melissa can help you detox stuff from things you were using in the past.
Yep.
I mean, it's wild to me. Years ago, and we just did a bunch of blood work, but years ago I had done a bunch of blood work. One of the things that they were testing me for was heavy metals, because that's a
Mhm.
common issue. And the lady was like shocked that I didn't have very many heavy metals. Like it was like negligible the amount they found in the testing. And to be honest, like you just never flipping know. But like one of the biggest switches you can make, you guys, is using a clean deodorant,
Mhm.
because for ladies, we're not supposed to sweat, even though we need to sweat. So these antiperspirants with aluminum in them,
Mm.
I mean, I'm sure you can dial in more
Like,
why
please don't do that.
you're putting them on. There's a lot of lymph nodes over here,
Oh yes.
your mammary gland. So we're absorbing that. So think about that, you guys. If you're putting all that aluminum in that area, it's going to increase, obviously
Mhm.
metal through this area, some heavy
Mhm.
metals, which is
Mhm.
going to potentially be a problem, right?
Mhm.
And they are linking that to breast cancer for sure.
Mhm.
So, and there's a lot of great clean deodorants that work now. Like I know we reformulated ours a couple years ago, and it's great because people would laugh and be like, "Does it really work?" Well, it does. I mean, I work out a crap ton, but you are supposed to sweat,
Mhm.
and
We need to.
we need to
Mhm.
sweat. And I actually was excited when I started sweating again, because my poor little body was in such a state not that long ago that I didn't sweat, and
That's not
and that
good.
was really stressful. I mean, I would walk
Mhm.
outside. It's like almost 100 degrees here today, which I actually love the heat, but I would sit outside on a day like this and not sweat, you guys, which is not normal. But
Mm.
there was a lot of other things going on, which thankfully we have fixed. But it's important to just realize that you can repair
Mhm.
past damage.
Yep,
Like
you
Melissa
can.
said, our state is wellness, our body wants to be well, and we can absolutely, move the needle forward in terms of changing things now. And it's not ever too late, and that doesn't mean that you have to be, you know, granola crunchy and you're making your own stuff. Like you don't have to. There's so many great cutting edge brands, including the one that I'm involved with, that make great products that deliver but are clean and safe. And so, but it's important to, I think about it. And like we said
Mm-hmm.
earlier, being proactive versus reactive,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like
Yep.
that reasoning, when people say that to me, it would always fascinate me. Like, well, I'm walking around in this world. I'm like, yeah, but there's things you can do,
Yeah.
and listen, you guys, the thing is too, is you're gonna feel better. Like you'll be
Oh,
shocked. I mean,
yes.
how many times do you hear, Melissa, like, I'm so tired? I mean, I'm sure that's a big thing. I know
Yep.
it's something I help a lot of people with.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to feel tired, you guys.
Mm-mm.
Like Melissa
No.
will tell you, I do a lot. I run 3 businesses, and I really, up until we have been doing some work, I really haven't been tired, but my body is fighting some big battles right now, which is a good thing. But even that, you guys, I am amazed at how much I'm still doing
Mm-hmm.
with like a little mini cat nap here and there. And I know in a couple months' time, I won't even need that nap. But, you shouldn't really be just
Mm-hmm.
tuckered out all the time. And if you are, like, changing your food, and yes, like
Yeah.
your products makes a big difference, because you keep putting stuff on you,
Mm-hmm.
your body gets tired because it's trying to combat that, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I think, again, this is not to scare. And certainly, I think we live in a world where, like, well, if you have a history of A, B, and C, my thing is this: we know a lot more than we did, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, maybe your grandmother had breast cancer or whatever, but, we also, I mean, gosh, we used to just put lead in paint, right? And put it right
Right.
in your house. Um, you know, we've come a long way in terms of some things, but we've come
Mm-hmm.
a long way in terms of having options, right? And so
Exactly.
I think
Exactly.
that's the piece we have to keep in mind. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah.
I think one of the underpinnings of what we've talked about today, one of the big underpinnings, well, there's a couple of them. One is to lean into your own power, who
Yes.
you are and what you want. Lean into that and own it. And the
Yeah.
second thing is that you have so many options. Once you decide what you want to do, then the question becomes, how do I do this? You're not stuck.
Yeah.
You're not stuck. And when we talk about changing products and we talk about switching out, and sometimes that can feel overwhelming. So contact Melissa or myself to help you get started on that kind of stuff. Melissa more than me around products. She's a whiz around that stuff. But leaning into that and just starting, right? Okay, I know I need to change my deodorant. All right, on a quest to find a deodorant that works for me, that I like, that smells great, but is clean and my body can use well. Move to the next thing. Is it lotion? Is it makeup? Um, and if it feels overwhelming, don't do it all at once. But I think the biggest thing to walk away with is when you have something like cancer come up in your life, lean into your own power. And if you need somebody to help you really parse out what that looks like, what it sounds like, what that feels like, and then ground in that, once again, get a hold of Melissa or I. We're really good at doing that. Because in the end, it's your life and you get to decide what happens.
100%. And yeah, don't be overwhelmed, you guys, because again, the process happens over time, but there are big changes you can make. And
Mm-hmm.
really decreasing your toxic load just is going to help across the
Huge.
board. And you're going to
Mm-hmm.
feel good, so then you won't
Mm-hmm.
be in fear.
Mm-hmm.
I know when my health was lousy, I was like, this is it. I'm going to get cancer. I'm going to get all these things. Like, because you feel lousy, your body's in a
Mm-hmm.
state. But once you start feeling good, you're like,
Mm-hmm.
wait a minute,
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to deal with
Exactly.
that. Like, I've got a great, vibrant life. And,
Mm-hmm.
like, it's really important to know that, you guys. And yeah, I mean, there are a lot of choices that we have now. And yeah, I mean, our hope is absolutely to empower you to just work with that, help,
Mm-hmm.
we can help you find it. I mean, it's funny. So we don't do perfume. My brand doesn't do any sort of perfume. And that's been like a little guilty pleasure of mine for a long time. Well, no wonder I had so many health issues, because it's all a bunch of junk. I found a bunch of clean, beautiful brands. I found one that I particularly love, but there's a lot of companies, you guys, that make clean perfumes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm constantly referring people to those brands, because it's not something we do, but it's something that's just nice. So, you know, or you can absolutely, you know, whip up your own if you're crafty, but like, you know, it's really awesome to know that we have choices around everything. My hairdresser uses all organic dyes. You know, like, listen, my entire head be pretty much white, sadly, at 41, but but she knows I'm just not ready to go there. So she's been using, you know, clean products actually for a long time. When I met her 9 years ago, that was her jam. She's always operated that way. But it's great because, you know, like, I don't react to it, and Lord knows I probably would if it was full of a bunch of weird stuff, you know. And so, so, you know, it's just doing a little more due diligence. And again, it doesn't mean that you're going to be 100% perfect all the time, but you just keep getting better and
working
you know,
at it.
and yeah. And if you have a diagnosis, I mean, first of all, like, I'm always offering prayer to anybody if you need it or open to it. And second of all, you know, yeah, talk to Melissa, get a second opinion about some things, and then, you know, we can figure it out all together, because it is, yeah, it's a daunting hurdle when that's put in front of you, right? But it doesn't have to mean that, like, this is the end. And I've had friends who fought it in a bunch of different ways. I will tell you, the ones that have fought holistically have stayed well. The ones who have not have dealt with just some other stuff as, like, I think more side effects. Yeah. Yes, because, you know, basically we're using a bunch of chemicals to deal with the disease caused by a bunch of chemicals. And it's like, but, you know, we're here to just, again, show another side of things, right?
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for your wisdom today. I appreciate you sharing.
Of course, Melissa, and you too. I mean, yeah, we're here to help you guys, you know. And if there's any more specifics you want around cancer, like, let us know, because Melissa, I'm sure, could explain more. She's always got great visuals. This is really, you know, very much a broader way to approach it.
Yes.
Definitely more. There's a lot.
Well, thanks for listening, you guys. And if there are ever anything that, any other things that you would like to chat about, I know, you know, we get our topics from clients that we're working with, and, you know, things that come into our world in the week, and we're like, hey, let's talk about this. But if there's ever anything that you want us to cover, we'd be happy to do that. We're not afraid of the big subjects, as you can tell, but also there are things that we don't think about that might be helpful to you. Feel free to contact either one of us. Our contact information is always under the video. And really just lean into your own wisdom and your own power today. Understand what that means, what it looks like, and what it feels like. Because even if you're walking into a big, you know, a big diagnosis and a big decision time around that, you don't have to walk into it with fear. Use the breathing exercises that Melissa shared with you, or find some, lean into some meditation, whatever it is you need to be able to center in and really focus in on what you need and what you want, and then walk forward with confidence. You've got this.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I love it, Melissa.
All right, you guys, have an amazing rest of your day, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, thank you.